Welcome, everybody, to this instant reaction episode of the At the Pylon podcast. Alongside Chandler Betts, my name is Nick Antonakas. Chandler, we were expecting to go down to one episode a week following the offseason happening. Usually our episodes for weekly previews air on Thursdays, so this works out nicely for our viewers.
Yep.
But we had a heartbreaking, earth-shattering news story break around 8:15 this morning.
Earlier
Bill
than that.
Belichick. Yeah?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah, like 7:30.
By the time I woke up, like 7:10.
I woke up to a barrage of texts, but regardless, Coach Belichick is out of New England. The two parties between Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick, they agreed to mutually part ways. Bill Belichick will continue coaching. Robert Kraft and the Patriots will search for a new head coach. And I guess, Chandler, before we kind of dive into the slew of reports and press conferences that have happened since this news broke this morning, why don't we just take your raw reaction to the news?
Yeah, so it's crazy that's it. People were talking yesterday because, of course, in the past 24 hours, 3 Hall of Fame coaches have all retired and or left their positions, being Pete Carroll and the key one, Nick Saban.
Yep.
I think, and a couple other people have been talking about it online, that Bill Belichick they knew yesterday that he was going to go, that was going to be this is going to be his last time. But I don't think that he wanted to overshadow one of his best friends, Nick Saban's retirement day. So I think that this was decided yesterday. They had a meeting this morning, of course, that we've learned, and that's when the official report comes out. But I think this was decided before. 24 years, almost a quarter of a century of the greatest organizational success in any sport with a salary cap. Maybe even you can argue any sport, period. It's absurd, and it's going to be, I will freely admit it, is going to be tough to see him break the wins record somewhere else, assuming that he does. But I will be rooting for him at all other places, except when he's playing the Patriots. I feel like I'm sounding like Robert Kraft this morning. That's basically what he said.
Exactly what he said.
And he's right, and he should say that. He's trained for PR in some cases. In some cases, he isn't, as we'll surely talk about. But it's wild to think that the only coach that we've ever known as the Patriots coach is gone, and that's it. And it happened. At like I think it was like when I left the house this morning at like 7:20, so it would have happened probably around like 7:05 a.m. It's wild. It's crazy. I've had an entire day to put it into words, and I still kind of can't. And I don't know if I will be able to for a couple of weeks at least, maybe even a season. We won't be able to really put it into words. All I can say is that I'm very excited for the Apple TV series, the Dynasty series, to come out in a couple of weeks. Or
Talk
maybe
about
it's 2 steps. I don't know.
Talk about ironic, Chandler, that's coming out as really this Patriots dynasty is over. Before you could say that it ended with Brady, but for all those who were not on that ship, it has definitely ended with Belichick, because without him, there's really no core piece of that historic run that won us 6 Super Bowls, multiple playoff appearances, countless AFC East championships, multiple Super Bowl appearances, even disregarding those that we won. We still got to the Super Bowl plenty of times. So just
30 playoff wins, 18 seasons made the playoffs, like 265. These are all off the top of my head. 265 wins roughly. The greatest. There's no way to debate it. And if you debate it, you are an idiot. I'm sorry. I don't like to say people are stupid. You are so stupid if you don't think he's the greatest coach of all time. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, that's a pretty clear, I guess, fact now amongst many. Bill Belichick currently sits in terms of that wins record that you were talking about.
He has coached the greatest player of all time, Tom Brady, the greatest defensive player of all time, Lawrence Taylor, the greatest special teamer of all time, Matthew Slater, the greatest kicker of all time, Adam Vinatieri.
Yep.
Common thread in there, and probably the best best offensive line coach of all time in Dante Scarnecchia.
And debatably the best tight end of all time in Rob
Debatably,
Gronkowski.
I will say that at least for another season. I will say that Gronk's the greatest tight end of all time. You can also argue, and this is my opinion, I think I'm in the minority here, the greatest wide receiver of all time in Randy Moss. That's my opinion. Who's the common thread? It's Bill Belichick, greatest of all time. Don't want to hear it. Greatest GM of all time as well, even though we've given him plenty of flack. He is still the greatest GM of all time and by far the greatest coach.
Now, one thing to weigh in on, Chandler, is the discussions from earlier this week. We obviously reported on it on our last episode on Monday. We were very much, at least I was seemingly leaning towards the side of Bill Belichick is seemingly going to return to the Patriots. It seems like he's fighting for his job. To me, that was the real focal point of Belichick needs to fight. Kraft is already in on him, and it's going to just turn around like that if Belichick can just put forth an idea that this is going to be repaired on his watch. We were afraid initially that he wasn't going to be fighting for that. That was proven wrong earlier this week. Despite that, Belichick still finds the door. It seems like Robert Kraft just kind of has it's seemingly in his press conferences, which I guess is a good time to dive into right now.
Sure, yeah.
Although they were pretty poorly expressed on Robert Kraft's part, Bill Belichick did a pretty great press conference, some banger quotes, and I will always be a
Couple?
Patriot.
Yep.
He's looking forward to coming back. Obviously, he's excited for the future, which heavily implies that he's going to be coaching elsewhere. If you
Yep.
don't believe the reports from this morning, you heard it
Yeah.
basically right from Belichick's mouth.
Two
He's going
two
to be somewhere
heavy
else.
two heavy landing spots to be discussed are the Falcons and the Commanders.
Yep. And weighing in on Kraft's portion of speaking, very, I guess, walking over eggshells in terms of discussing whose fault a lot of this was,
Oh, actually.
what the decisions really meant, I guess, to the team's future. He really refused to reflect on the future at all. He was just saying, like, oh, well, we're going to talk about this and, the future, what's to come is for another day. So basically, in talking about all that stuff, he was very unclear in terms of what Kraft himself thought the real problem was with the New England Patriots. He even told reporters, you know better than I do about the biggest problem surrounding the Patriots
Yeah, that was
over these
silly.
last 4 years. That was a stupid, I guess, quote. But I mean, you pointed out effectively before we started recording that, it was to save some grace from Bill Belichick
Yeah.
because, that is a respectable approach, but still, Kraft not looking so hot, saying that he doesn't know what the problem is, but at the same time, you had the authority to make this decision to move on from Bill Belichick. Um, Kraft was also asked about the possibility of Belichick changing roles, possibly giving up some of that power that he's been notorious of holding all throughout his NFL career thus far. He basically said that they visited that option. Those reports were correct from earlier this week, but they initially, and I guess concluded on the idea of we're not going to do that. Kraft called it basically too confusing to meddle with the power rankings with Bill Belichick in the system just because of the way that it progressed over time. Uh, Kraft described it as a slow, I guess, upward slope of Belichick gaining power over the years. Specifically, he mentioned after their third Super Bowl win together is when Belichick really amounted an exceptional amount of power behind the scenes of the Patriots. So to take that away from him, Belichick, Kraft called that confusing and would muddle with the system. So fair to, I guess, start from scratch in a sense. But what a lot of people were saying on NBC Sports earlier this week, Chandler, is with Belichick going out, and this was obviously before he was
Sure.
ousted, this is basically like uh, an expansion team. The roster has no real defiable point. Belichick was really just like our anchor of like, this is what the Patriots is, the do your job shtick led by Coach Belichick and his monotone answers in press conferences. That entire thing is gone, let alone even if Matthew Slater stayed, which he's not, a lot of our leaders are gone from that locker room as well. It's just a totally fresh team that the Patriots are faced with.
Which is very interesting for all kinds of candidates to get into the position because it's essentially a completely clean slate. It is quite, they are the biggest possible shoes to fill, but it is a clean slate. We have the second most amount of cap. We have the third overall pick. It'll be very interesting to see how the next couple days and really the next couple of weeks, because you're not allowed to interview with people who have current NFL head coaching positions or NFL coaching positions for head coaching vacancy until January 22nd, which is 11 days from when we're recording this. So I don't expect anything to come out super concretely about actual interviews. Expect to hear a lot of requests for interviews in the next couple days from the Patriots, as that's been happening throughout the course of the league. But I don't expect to see anything concrete until probably the 24th or the 25th. But before we continue, also via Jonathan Jones, who not the Patriot player, but lead insider for the NFL on CBS, um, the Commanders are not expected to pursue Bill Belichick. So
Oh,
he's also not on the Titans list, allegedly. Not him nor um, Pete Carroll, I think, was the other option on that list, being on the Titans list via Ian Rappaport. It's looking real like it's going to be the Falcons or the Chargers, and I've been saying the Chargers since like week 9, but it's looking like it's more likely going to be the Falcons, who have a lot of talent and are just kind of a quarterback away in a similar way to how the Bucks were a quarterback away before they got Tom Brady.
to move on from Bill Belichick, before we kind of put a stamp in his whole relieving of duties, I'll just give my raw reaction and then some
Yes.
accomplishments to applaud the greatest coach of all time. I was shocked this morning when I woke up to your text, Chandler, of we got to do a reaction episode, and I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, it happened. There was
Yep.
a decision. And as soon as I saw the news, it did break my heart
Was
because
I actually the one who delivered it to you before you
you
saw
were
any reports?
because I saw on my phone we got to do a
Ah,
reaction episode. I'm like, oh damn, he's gone.
crazy.
Like that's
Yeah.
really what it is. But wow, it was just shocking to me. You know, I don't know if it's gonna sting as bad seeing Belichick coach another place as it did seeing Brady play in another place, just because both were so painful, and I guess in this case the Patriots are already bad when Belichick left, so it's not like we were just ripped away our success because we were already kind of bad. But regardless, I still to this day hold on to the fact of if we kept Belichick for next season, I think we would have been fine, especially considering the flexibility that Belichick was willing to have behind the scenes in terms of personnel decisions. I think we would have picked well with that third overall pick. Now, obviously, that Belichick is out the door, it's a totally new story of possibilities. We could even see ourselves trading up for the first time in history ever. So that could be interesting. But
Yeah.
just a huge thank you to Bill Belichick because
Yes.
both Chandler and I know we've been so lucky because our entire lives have been centered around Bill Belichick. Most of our lives centered around Tom Brady until he left. But really, from 2002, when Chandler was born, I was born in '03 on, we have seen nothing but success from the New England Patriots, led by none other than Bill Belichick. So, nothing but gracious remarks and thanks to him. Just to rattle off some accomplishments before we move on to Patriots coaching options of the future. Belichick has 17 division titles, the most by a head coach in NFL history, with Shula, Andy Reid, and Tom Landry tied for second with 13. 9 conference championships, the most by a head coach in the Super Bowl era. 12 Super Bowl appearances, including his time as an assistant. 21 winning seasons as head coach, which only trails Halas, Shula, Lambeau, and Landry. One of 4 undefeated and untied regular seasons in NFL history, obviously 2007. It was the only one under the 16 game schedule played from 1978 to 2020. And then I guess a pretty iconic quote to end on: Bill Belichick in his press conference giving praise to none other than the players. Coach says, quote, "Players win games in the NFL. I've been very, very fortunate to coach some of the greatest players to ever play the game." And to wrap that point up, as Patriots fans, although the future may seem a little bit bleak, depending on what direction the Patriots take, we were so lucky, as Kraft emphasized, to have the greatest quarterback of all time and the greatest coach of all time at the same time. So, shout out Bill Belichick. So, with that note, Chandler, let's move on. You've assembled a list of 12 coach and GM options for the
Yes.
Patriots because Kraft obviously has kind of relinquished this whole give the head coach all the power. It's seeming like the Patriots are going to hire a general manager and a head coach. Before you dive into your list, since this firing, I only have one coach that I want to see in a Patriots hoodie or
And
whatever
who
the
would
hell it
that
may
be?
be. It's Mike Vrabel. I
Okay.
don't want to see anybody but Mike Vrabel. Gerard Mayo, I respect what you've done for the Patriots. I respect that you've been within the organization for thus long, but going amongst the path, like we talked about last episode, of trying to fill the Belichick shoes with basically Belichick's protege up to this point, because best believe all of his kids are leaving. So Gerard Mayo is probably the closest to that. I just don't want to see you go into that spot and then get killed. So I think Vrabel would bring in an energy that not only Robert Kraft is extremely excited about, but it seems like Mike Vrabel himself wants to come back here. So that to me is a key point in asserting this fresh start because, like we said at the top of the episode, we basically have nothing now in our system that relates to the 20 somewhat years that followed 2024. So bringing up Gerard Mayo as the one who was implemented in that Belichick system to take over when he retired, I just don't think would be effective. I think we got to just start clean slate, bring in Vrabel. He ties some Patriots history from the past. So that's all we can really afford at this point. That I would just go with Vrabel. But Chandler, let's hear your list. Top 12. Here we
Sure.
go.
Before I get into that, I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
A report that came out from Ian Rappaport today, or yeah, today, yesterday came out yesterday. Um, Talked about part of the reason that Mike Vrabel was fired from by the Titans owner Amy Adams Strunk was due to how he acted during the Patriots Hall of Fame weekend and how he never
Yeah.
dispelled rumors that he was going to coach the Patriots. I think that's super interesting. That is it's interesting. And before I get into the coaches, let me talk about the GMs. I'll be really brief about them because I don't even know as much as about them as I do the coaches, of course. These names mean nothing to you until they become GMs.
Yeah.
Quickly run through them and who they are. Ed Dodds, the Colts assistant general manager.
I just have a question.
If
Are you starting at
Yes,
12 or 1?
I'm starting at 12.
Okay.
I'll start at 12 for both lists.
Thank you.
Ed Dodds, Colts assistant general manager. He's likely, if Jim Harbaugh were to become a head coach, he would likely be the GM tied with him. Mike Borgonzi, the assistant GM for the Chiefs. Terrence Gray, the Bills director of player personnel. Player personnel and assistant GM are essentially the same thing for intents and purposes. Will McClay, who is the Cowboys VP of player personnel. He's basically the GM because Jerry Jones is their GM. He's the acting GM. The next two are the Bucks assistant general managers, being John Spytek, who is the one who focuses on the draft, and one of my favorites, Mike Greenberg, not the one from Monday Morning, or not the one from Good Morning Football, rather probably the best contract manipulator in NFL history, arguably. Um, Built a team that obviously won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady, and then built a team that just made the playoffs with $80+ million in dead cap, which is incredibly impressive.
Mhm.
Trey Brown, Bengals senior personnel executive. The Bengals have the smallest front office in all of football, so he does so much work. He also has history working with Belichick in New England and also in Philly. Ian Cunningham, who is the Bears assistant general manager. He was a Ravens scout before that. 2021, he got a job with Ryan Poles, and he is also one of two finalists for the Commanders general manager job, which is already being decided, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Joe Horitz, Ravens director of player personnel. He's their top scout, their top evaluator. I am on record for saying that the Ravens are one of, if not the best drafted organization in all of football. Would love to bring him in. Alec Hallaby, he's one of the assistant general managers for the Eagles. He is like the preeminent analytics person in football right now. I haven't seen him on a lot of lists, though he got an interview from the Panthers, so we could maybe swoop in and take him. And then my top two, number two, and I really wanted to put this person at number one, Tom Telesco, former general manager of the Chargers, assembled one of the, if not the most talented rosters in football,
Mhm.
and just gets booted because he kind of had to be. They had three head coaches in his tenure. He wasn't great at hiring head coaches. Let's not give him that responsibility. Let's just let him craft the best possible team, and then we go win football games. Number one is somebody who has been in a lot of conversations. I don't expect us to be able to get him because I expect him to just be given a Scrooge McDuck amount of money to be the Commanders general manager, being Adam Peters, 49ers assistant general manager, and former Patriots scout. That is my general manager list. I would be
No,
happy with any of those 12.
no Ziegler on there, huh?
No Ziegler. I think that he will have to go somewhere else or he'd have to be some position below general manager before he gets one. I wouldn't be upset with him, but I think that you need to be pairing a general manager and a head coach. And spoiler alert, I only have a couple people with Patriots ties on my head coach list.
All right, well, let's hear it.
All right,
And I guess
12.
wait, before you dive into
Yes.
it, a lot of people have been talking about Nick Caserio. I'm sorry.
No
He's
chance.
he's not going anywhere. He
No
just
way.
brought in CJ Stroud. They're going to the playoffs. He's loved
Yeah.
there for good.
Yeah,
I'm
they have
sorry.
Will. They might have both offensive and defensive rookies of the year. It's
Yep.
very possible. I don't know if Will Anderson deserves it. I think it's probably Jordan Davis, but regardless, it's very
But yeah, your
possible.
list.
Yes. So number 12, I really didn't want to put this person on this list, but it was him or it was Antonio Pierce, and I'm throwing him as number 12, Gerard Mayo. I would. There are two camps right now on Patriots Twitter, on Patriots Reddit, on Patriots everywhere. It is the absolutely give me Gerard Mayo camp, and it is the correct camp, the I don't want Gerard Mayo camp. He has never once called a play in the NFL. He doesn't have primary play calling duties right now. That goes to Steve Belichick on defense. He's People are talking about how he's going to build a great culture when apparently the culture is horrible in New England right now. And people talk about how I saw something, people were like, oh yeah, he knows the offensive change that needs to happen. No, he doesn't. He's the linebackers coach
Yeah.
and doesn't even call plays. He's specifically the inside linebackers coach, not even outside linebackers as well. That's Steve Belichick.
And
Um,
he became the assistant head coach once
yes.
our whole offense died. So
Yes,
I don't want to hear it.
there were reports that he and Belichick's contracts were in tandem originally, that as Belichick's contract was going to expire in 2024, as was Gerard Mayo's, and there was going to be a direct path for him to become the new head coach. So much so that I actually did a little bit of research. Turns out his brother is actually the assistant strength coach for the Patriots, interestingly enough, Deron Mayo.
Wow.
I think that there was a very clear path from Gerard Mayo to being this past offseason. There was the plan to have Belichick go for 2 more years, then Gerard Mayo take over. That was before we went 4-13. Get him out of the building, assuming that the next coach doesn't want him. I'll quickly run through the next few until I get to the top five, which are the ones that
Yeah.
I really want.
Yeah.
Dan Quinn, former Falcons head coach and current Cowboys defensive coordinator. He's shown that he can lead a team to a Super Bowl. Give him another chance, maybe. He's had a very nice offense, a very nice defense here that has transformed a lot and had a really effective season, even without Trayvon Diggs, who, of course, had a season ending injury before the year.
28 to
Uh,
3.
23. Yeah, it'd be funny if Bill Belichick was the Falcons head coach and Dan Quinn was the Patriots
That
head coach. That
that
would be
would be funny.
hilarious. Todd
But yeah,
Monken, first year coordinator for the Ravens. Before that, he was actually the Georgia offensive coordinator when they won back-to-back national championships. Uh, has got Lamar to be an MVP, the MVP. Very impressive. Wouldn't be mad with him. These are all the ones that I wouldn't be mad with. The top five are the ones that I really want.
yep.
Next up is actually Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald. He's being attributed as one of the brightest defensive minds in football. Wouldn't hate bringing him in. Next up, somebody who I do expect to get a head coaching job, all except the next one. I expect him to get a head coaching job. Bobby Slowick, Texans offensive coordinator. He's 37 years old. He comes from the Shanahan tree. This was his first year as a head coach because he went with D'Amico Ryans from being the pass game coordinator for the 49ers into becoming the Texans offensive coordinator. They have had a top 10 offense in terms of points this year. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets a job going into next year. Next up is the sentimental pick, Ryan Flores, Vikings defensive coordinator. I think that
Mm,
this is what people think would happen if we were to get Gerard Mayo,
yep.
because Brian Flores is just significantly better, has called plays, has led a team to almost making the playoffs, is known as a head coach, a coordinator who's going to disrupt quarterbacks, who can build a culture, who players would fight for. He is what Gerard Mayo thinks he is. Wouldn't hate it. Wouldn't be super thrilled, but I could
I
sleep
would
at
be
night.
happy with that. I actually forgot about Flores.
Yeah, it wouldn't
So
be bad. But the next six are all considerably better in my
yeah,
opinion,
let's hear him.
specifically for the Patriots. This is the last one that I wouldn't really be banging the drum for, but would be happy with. Another one I expect to get a head coaching job. Aaron Glenn, Lions defensive coordinator. Um, he's been part of this Dan Campbell staff that has completely revitalized the Lions. They won their first division championship since like 1993 or something, some wild time. He has completely revitalized his team. Again, in light of injuries, he's still been able to put together a successful defense that has what did they go 12-5, a
Yep.
really good record after going 7-9 the year before. Really impressive. Now the five that I really want. You'll notice a common trend with these guys. A lot of them are offensive. Uh, Fifth is David Canales. I think I'm saying that right. The Bucks offensive coordinator. This is his first time as a offensive coordinator this past season. Did wonders with Baker Mayfield. Just so good this year. Has completely saved Baker Mayfield's career. In my opinion, it didn't really need to be saved, but he did it. He's known for saving quarterbacks because he did that the year before as the pass game coordinator with the Seahawks. He brought Geno
Mm.
Smith to be his complete best to finally realize the potential that Geno Smith had coming out of the draft in 2013. Took him 10 years to do it, and David Canales was the guy to do it. He won a Super Bowl as a coach with the Broncos, or sorry, with the Seahawks when they beat the Broncos. He's been there for 13 years. He leaves for 1 year, has an incredible season with the Bucks, 5,000-yard quarterback. Would love to see him in New England. He's also young. I think he's like 41. Next up
Nice.
is the only one who has never called plays, but that you're gonna understand why I like this one really quickly. Frank Smith. He's an offensive coordinator. You want to guess for what team?
What team?
The Dolphins. I would love to
Yeah, there you go.
see. I would love to see Frank Smith as our offensive coordinator. He has such a
Or
similar
our head coach.
philosophy. Yes, as a head coach.
Yeah.
Such a similar philosophy to Mike McDaniel. They've raved about each other in the past. I would love to see that kind of offense brought to New England because I believe that that is the future of the NFL.
Yeah.
Number three, don't kill me. Number three,
It's Vrabel.
it's Mike Vrabel. I had him at number two to start, but then, I thought about it for a second. This is going to sound kind of crazy to say. Do we know that Mike Vrabel's actually a really good head coach? Like, do we? Because looking at the past two seasons,
Yes.
do we?
Because of that wild card game, he out finessed Belichick.
He, the signs were already there that the
Yeah,
Patriots were
but like,
dead.
but he out finessed us. That was a coaching battle there in that last 6 minutes of the game.
Well, let's look at his record. Let's look at his records.
Okay.
So he takes over the Titans in 2018. Uh,
Also, they were competitive with friggin' Ryan Tannehill at the helm.
it's
So
true.
I
Let
hate
me.
Ryan Tannehill, by the way.
So I
He's
do
no
as
good.
well. So he took over a team that the year before they went 9-7, lost in the divisional round, and fired their head coach. The next two seasons he goes 9-7, makes the playoffs in one of them. Next season 11-5, then 12-5, then 7-10, and 6-11. Of those seasons, he had for points he cracked the top 10 twice, being in 2020 and 2019. He cracked for yards the top 10 only once. For defensive points, only cracked the top 10 once. For defensive yards, never cracked the top 10. For the total point spread, cracked the top 10 once. And for total yards, was only top 15 once. Or top 15, yeah, top 15 twice. He was 15th in two different seasons. Those aren't impressive stats. I do think that he's a good coach, and I think that he can create a good culture. However, I don't think that he's good enough to be above my next two, who are Jim Harbaugh and Ben Johnson. Jim Harbaugh is possibly the best quarterback developer that you could bring in because he has made Colin Kaepernick a good quarterback. He made JJ McCarthy a draftable quarterback this year. He has had Lamar, or not Lamar, excuse me. Who else did he have? He had a couple others that I was thinking of. Andrew Luck in college. That was another one. Who would be very apt if we were to get a Drake May type player. I think that would be really nice for trying to develop a quarterback. And also, he's shown that he can bring a team to the Super Bowl. Give him whatever money he wants. And then last is the head coach this year. It's Ben Johnson. He is the number one candidate. He's on the cutting edge of not the Shanahan, but the other side of football, the more power running offense that's going to come into the league, while he's also made Jared Goff into a top 10 top 9 quarterback. Everything I've said about Aaron Glenn could be said about Ben Johnson and then some. So he is my number one. Harbaugh's my number two. And then Vrabel's my three. I would be happy with any of the top five. I'd really be happy with any of them except Gerard Mayo. But we'll see what happens, I guess. It's looking like it's going to be Gerard Mayo because he is the leading candidate according to multiple sources, and that pains my heart.
Well, I will to build on not only off your top three, but to build off that Mayo report. It seems that Mayo is a top candidate on the in-house side of things. That's been specified in a lot of
Oh, cool. I
reports.
didn't see that.
So that is one thing to pay attention to. Regardless, I think you're right. Regardless of whether it's a top in-house or out-of-house candidate, I think he's still amongst probably Kraft's top 5 choices out there right now, which is kind of scary to say because you put 11 guys higher than him, and I agree with you on all of them. All 11 of those guys, I think, are a better choice. I would even
Get
put
him
Antonio
out.
Pierce as a
I
better
thought about
choice.
it, but they've neither of them have called plays. One of them understands the Patriot culture, one of them doesn't. That's the only reason I put him there. I
That's
really didn't
fair.
want to. But
That's fair.
before we move on to other things, I would like to harken back to something that I said a while ago. I didn't find exactly when I said it, but I can tell you it was after the Giants game. Um, I was talking about a quote that Adam Schefter had when he said that he expects 7 to 10 coaches to get fired this offseason because the average is 6.8 and there were only 5 the year before. And I remember I banged the drum that he was absolutely right. How many have been fired so far, Nick?
Oh, 7, right?
8.
Okay.
25% of the league. Who was right?
Chandler Betts.
Adam Schefter, and by extension, me. Shout
Chandler
out.
Betts. Shout out Chandler Betts and Adam Schefter.
Yeah,
Dynamic duo.
absolutely.
But regardless, Harbaugh is an interesting choice, Chandler. The
Yeah.
reason that I didn't even consider him is because I really don't think he's going to make a move to the NFL. I
He
just
just won a
don't.
national. Oh, he just won a national championship. Maybe it's time. He's like, I've done everything I need to do here.
Also, with the
I
whole
also don't know if he
Michigan
does.
saga, too, maybe that's part of what sends him out. He's like, you know what? Screw these guys. I'll go because you
Yeah,
suspended
every
me and I
day it
still
goes
won a
on. It
national championship.
every day it's going on. It seems like he actually didn't do anything wrong. I can't lie. I may be looking at this through rose-colored glasses, but the fact that nothing comes out and the fact that everything is pretty seemingly to be like getting pushed under the rug, pushed to the back burner, seems like he maybe didn't do anything wrong. Uh, I don't know. That's just me reading the tea leaves.
And some things to consider, although these are all great options. I mean, besides Mayo, all
Yeah.
these are great options. Kraft was very adamant in the press conference. As I said before, he's like, I'm not talking about the future now. This will be a couple days away when we start to talk about this, blah, 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 blah. So, considering that the Patriots front office has basically been cleared out with Bill Belichick heading out, that's your number one uh, decision maker, head coach, play caller in most categories. He's gone. So, considering that the draft is closer than a lot of people think,
Oh
we're
yeah.
like 3 months out. I would be looking to get somebody in here ASAP because although you're a top 3 pick, you're only looking at a couple guys because you're higher up in the draft in that first round. This is
Hmm.
an absolute. You fire Belichick because of all these picks that he made in the past, fine, but you need to get this year right. This year is going to be the most important draft that the New England Patriots have seen in the last 24 years since Belichick was brought in.
I will even say ever.
Probably ever. You might be right.
We're
Um,
we're 4 days away from knowing every single person that will be in the draft. They have to all be declared. All the underclassmen have to be declared by the 15th. At that point, we will know exactly who comes out. On my drive home from work today, Marvin Harrison Jr. officially declared during my work today. Emeka Ibuka, who is the number 2 wide receiver from Ohio State and likely was a Patriots candidate to be drafted in the second round, is not coming out. He is staying in school, which is
oh,
unfortunate for us. At the very least, when you stay, I was thinking about this. When you stink, you want everybody possible to declare, even if you aren't going to pick them, so that other teams pick them so you can get the people you want.
yep. Yeah, and with that, Chandler, 5 days, the countdown begins. An overhaul in Patriots culture is among us. The unthinkable happened today with Belichick going out the door.
Yep.
What do you all think about this decision? Let us know in the comments. Make sure to follow us on @the.pylon. We'll be back with our once a week episodes next week. On Monday, we're going to be grading the Patriots offense this season. We're going to go through letter grades for each position, dive into things surrounding specific players. Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. But regardless, that's going to be an entertaining episode, and the episodes will not stop throughout this offseason. So stay tuned here on At the Pylon, especially considering the whirlwind of change that's coming to the New England Patriots. So with that, alongside Chandler Betts, my name is Nick Antonakis. We'll see everybody on Monday for a full grading episode of the Patriots offense. Thank you, Bill Belichick.